Hey Hairtales family, my name is Darshika Salvasivam, and I'm the content director for Hairtales. On this episode of Hairtales, I have the great honor of being a guest host and introducing the one and only D-Local Kid. We had such a great conversation with Dilo, where they shared their lived experience as a queer transgender Tamil person living in the United States, which included a deep dive into their reflections on anti-Black racism and the impact the Black community has had on their life. Now, we can't wait to share their insights with you, but before we hear from Dilo, here's a brief introduction to their amazing work. Dilo is a queer transgender Tamil-Sri Lankan-American actor, writer, comic. Dilo's television roles have included Looking, Transparent, Sense8, and MR.ROBOT, and web series EASTSIDERS, DYKE Central, including a leading role in a ColorCreative and Project Greenlight produced Minimum Wage. He also plays the role of Geo in the upcoming feature film Death and Bowling. He is currently in development on a scripted series based on his life through Samir Gardezi's Break the Room Media and Paul Feig's Powderkeg Media. Most recently, Dilo was awarded the Artist Disruptor Fellowship through the Center for Cultural Performance and 50/50 by 2020, an initiative started by Joey Soloway. His solo shows Rambulations, Defunct, De facto Life, and To Tea or Not to Tea have toured theaters and festivals nationally. He's currently working on his latest solo called Queer Noise with the support of CTG's Library Series and LA LGBT Center. He is a co-founder of CORE, a queer South Asian comedic artist collective that was created in response to rising ideology of intolerance, both in Modi's India and Trump's America. CORE currently hosts space in LA for South Asian artists for Black Lives. His work has been published and or written in academic journals, literary anthologies, and print and online journalism sources, such as The Guardian, NBC, and The Advocate. He was invited to be a commentator on CNN, has appeared in BuzzFeed and Fusion Videos, and the award-winning documentary Performing Girl centers his queer story as a trans artist. He facilitates writing workshops and created the Coming Out, Coming Home writing workshop series for South Asian and or immigrant LGBTQ organizations across the nation, and frequently collaborates with NQTTCN, the National Queer Trans Therapists of Color Network. So with no further ado, please welcome Dilo.
Hey everybody, my name is Dilo. I am a queer and transgender Tamil actor, writer, comic, and I am so happy to be on Hair Talks, and I just want to give a huge shout out to the Hairtales community. Hair means to me virility and fertility. Just kidding. It doesn't mean that at all. To me, I think that hair is sort of like a marker for the fact that I am Tamil. I've seen my hair textures change and grow. I've had a whole history with hair, and so I almost feel like the hair or lack thereof is a marker of my queer story, my history. Yeah. You know, I think like my journey with hair is very similar to my journey with clothing in a different way. You know, I was always, as a young kid, like in boy clothes. My mama used to take me to the boys section to get me clothes because she was like, you know, if you're not gonna wear girl clothes, at least wear nice clothes. And then, and I think that in the same way that my amma bought me bras that were hyper feminine because those are the style that she knew because she wore those. At some point in my sort of queer growing up, my journey into queer adulthood, I was friends with a lot of masculine of center folks of color, and one in particular was shocked to see that I was wearing such a feminine lacy style bra, right? And I was like, I don't even know how to, you know, shop for these things. Like, I don't want to go shop for these things. These are the same shits I've been wearing since I was, you know, since I got them, you know? And he introduced me to sports bras. And that was a big, like, you know, like, oh my goodness, like this can happen. And this is what I can do, right? And in a similar way, like growing up, you know, like we're all somewhat hairless when we're younger. I mean, I'm not saying that I wasn't hairy to some degree, but like definitely not like I am now. And then, you know, you grow up and puberty hits and like you're getting hair in all sorts of places. But like in my family in particular, you know, my appa is so damn hairy that like, you know, like you're in Jaffna and like a mosquito come and try and get at you, like these mosquitoes would get caught up and they'd be like, get me out of here. You know what I'm saying? So like, that's the style of hair that we were getting as young folks who were assigned female at birth. So, you know, there's this constant sort of like, how do you present yourself in America, you know? And it's not necessarily, it wasn't even about like femininity almost. It was more about like, how do you not let your hairiness be a marker of your immigrantness? You get what I'm saying? And so, you know, I shaved and it was just so annoying. And I'd always get ingrowns because my hair was mad thick, mad curly, you know what I'm saying? And then I would also, you know, so there was shaving, there was waxing. I think I got my arms waxed for the first time for prom. And then, you know, it was just like one thing after the other. And then one day, like I meet queer community and nobody's shaving shit. So I was like, I don't want to do this either, you know? And I mean, I did do it for a little while also because I felt like there was another part about me being in the theater and playing feminine characters. So I would shave or wax for that as I was doing more of that theater work. And I felt like it was just more convincing if I didn't have hair on my female characters. But that sort of liberation from having to shave and having to wax and sort of owning the fact that I was just a hairy motherfucker, it was like it's a big marker in my journey because it was almost like I don't need to prove to anybody that I belong on the soil. I don't need to prove to anybody that how I am is worthy of being in like that my brown hairy queer ass was needed to ask permission to be on this in this world, sorry. And so that has kind of been that sort of history. Shaving my head was actually like a huge deal. Not to me though, you know what I'm saying? And I think that hair is also like how people kind of, our own people claim one another, you know, like Tamil people will claim, like I saw the whole community sort of like, you know, when I walked into a function and I had my head shaved, you know, and I saw them do that same when they realized that that shaved head was actually a marker of my queerness, you know. But honestly, like I gotta tell you, like my transgender history has been that of like me feeling the most comfortable in my skin with presenting more masculine in this world, right? So I always wanted short hair. And then when I felt like I had to try and be a girl in order to survive my town and like puberty and all of those points where you don't want anybody to sniff that you're queer, I grew out my hair, but even then I would shave because, you know, like a lot of Tamil people have a lot of thick ass wavy hair, and no matter how what you shave underneath it, it's like nobody could tell because your hair is just gonna be big anyway. So so I shaved half of it and nobody could tell, and then like I could queer it up, like putting it up on top of my head or whatever. And then finally, when I moved out to New York later, that's when I properly shaved my head and came back home to Amma's house, and they, like, forever, they were just in my ass about growing out my hair. And one time, I think this was like when I was in my mid-20s, Amma was like, you can't go to my cousin's wedding unless you grow out your hair and wear a sari. And I was like, what are you telling me? And she's like, no, you can't come. I was like, how are you not gonna let me come? She's like, no, you have to grow out your hair and wear a sari. So I grew out my hair. And you know, like our hair, a lot of our hair is like, it grows, even when it's short, it's like, it was just like a thing, like a being on top of my head. And so I did it, and I wore a sari because I wanted to go so badly to this damn wedding. And after that, I was like, I'm never doing this again. Like, it just felt so awful. And I just shaved my head, and I was like, I'm never wearing a sari again. I mean, I wore it for the stage, but, you know, after that, it was done. So, you know, I had this poem that I wrote back in the day where it was like, you know, in our culture, you know, shaving your hair was almost like, you know, it's a shaving your head is a act. It's a rites of passage for many, but it's also like, um, it's also a way to sort of say to oneself that you're getting rid of your ego around things, or it might at some other points feel like punishment. And to me, not being able to shave my head was like punishment. It was almost like it, to me, I was so this desire to be free of any of the restrictions around gender, around what it meant to be like a good brown girl or whatever, that after a while I was just like, like I'm done. Like I felt like I needed that to be the most free. I will say that now it is so interesting, right? Like, so I take testosterone, and now like my already hairy self it's now even like double the thickness. And then there's also the fact that I have a little bit of a tadi growing, and then I have a receding hairline now. So it's like, even if I wanted to grow out my hair, I can't, you know? And so like there's also this feeling of like, damn, now I'm just like an old man. You know what I'm saying? Because that's what happened. But you know, honestly, like if I had to do it all over again, I wouldn't change anything, you know? So it is what it is. But there's always, I feel like with me, there was always going to be like this, like, I like hair. I love hair. I love hair on anybody else. I just didn't want it for myself. And then just like breasts, yeah, it'll take 2 or 3 seconds for people to catch that one. And then, and then I also like I didn't want, but like now, because I think it's that flip, right? Like, oh, now you can't grow out a full head of hair like you used to. And then your mind plays tricks on you, and you're like, damn, I wish I could. And it's like, nobody's tripping. Everybody been knowing your ass was bald. Nobody saw yourself outside of being bald before that. I did have a little like stripe-y sort of patch on my head for a little while. And later I think I even saw a roundtable discussion on hair talks around a mohawk being given to indigenous folks who are chiefs, and how doing even a mohawk is not is appropriation. Um, Without the understanding of that, I had a mohawk, and you know, I have to think about that a little bit more. But I did have that, and I think that was probably the most I had grown out my hair from when I was like, from when I initially first shaved my head, or actually that moment where I grew out my hair for a little bit, and then for my amma. So the majority of my life I've been bald, hairy everywhere else, but bald on the top. Was that TMI? Too much, probably. Well, first of all, like in regards to what I want cisgender or straight Tamil people to know is that, you know, when you know, as your queer and trans Tamil sibling, um, I'm I'm always like, I wish that y'all would just, even if you couldn't stick up for us, like maybe just make the aunties and uncles be quiet, you know, like just telling them like, you know what, you don't know anything about their path, let them just be, and challenging them repeatedly and repeatedly that if if being alive is something that Tamil people cannot take for granted, then everything else that is like silliness shouldn't even be on the table. You know what I'm saying? Like, we need to start keeping our priorities in our hearts and our minds, and let our priorities be the wellness of all of our people. So that, just off the bat. And then to in regards to my Tamil queer siblings who are on their own journeys with hair, I'm kind of like, you know what, mommy, just do you. Experiment. Like, hair is deep because we've made it deep. But in actuality, your journey with your hair is even deeper than what the outside world is telling you, whether the Tamil world or the outside world in general. We should be able, like, I see so many people, like cis straight people, dyeing their hair, getting queer cuts, like where they shave it on the half side and then doing, you know, and they're not queer or whatever. And I'm kind of like, yeah, everybody should be doing themselves. I mean, sexually, yes, too, but I meant really, you know, uh, in the way that I meant it. So what I am saying is that we should be just allowing people to just be, and if you know, if there's something about yourself in general that you don't like and you want to change it, like the way that I see it is like, trans people, a lot of our journeys include medical procedures. We're not doing these medical procedures as an insult to you. We're doing it for our freedom. In the same way, I'm kind of like, we're experimenting with our look, our ways, because that's our freedom. So like, let us be. I'm the type of person who's like, I don't care what a motherfucker does. Like, I don't care. Like, you want to get, you know, you want to get a boob job, like you want to get ass jobs. I don't know what they're all called, but like, you want to put shit in your body, like, I don't give a fuck. I mean, the only one that I'm a little bit like, wait, what is that all about, is when people bleach their assholes. Like, that's the only one that I'm kind of like, it would just take so much to show that. Like, what's the point? It's like you need a flashlight at a bar and be like, look what I got. Anyway, we won't go there. But what I am saying is that I am cool with anybody doing everything. Like, just do it. Like, be you, do you. And if that journey includes like you wanting to show up at a function and have your hair all wild, or, you know, wild, like, do that. Because I think that our communities need to get shaken up some more. You know, like, people need to get jostled a little bit just so that we can start being like, yeah, actually none of this really matters. The same community who are not, like, my parents are in their 70s, the same community that was giving strife to everybody else for doing something different is now like, they find their own lives in the freedom of the queer people that they've been around. You know what I'm saying? Because at the end of the day, everybody's got secrets. And sometimes cis people's secrets and straight people's secrets is far more heavy than just being queer, you know, because there's a lot of silence in our community. So all of this to say that, yeah, like, I feel like we make hair deep because of the messaging that has been there historically. It can be as deep as you want it to be. Everybody, you know, like when you do forensics around things, they need hair samples because its DNA is in there, and our DNA is, you know, is so important. And so I always think about it that way. Like, yes, I didn't want hair, and I had a lot of artists who come from communities where hair is very important, you know, and they used to talk about hair like being the protection, you know what I'm saying? Like the hair protects all the most important parts of your body. But I was kind of like, well, shoot, like then Tamil people must be really important because we're hairy as fuck, you know what I'm saying? But like, we're very important. Anyway, so all, but you know, there's a significance to the fact that you know, we as a race of people would groom ourselves with fire, you know what I'm saying? And I think about that and I'm like, you know, there's to me, not having hair, and I know some other cultures don't have hair, like they purposely shave their heads, but there is something about fire being symbolic and a singeing and a desire to erase pain from me. You know what I'm saying? And that's how I've understood it. Yeah. There, prior to there being blades and scissors and all of that good stuff, um, there's been, well, with the use of fire, that was like a main way that people would groom it. It wasn't time consuming. It was very quick and short. You just put some fire to your hair and it would singe it. And I don't know in what fashion things were ritualized with fire. I don't know any of that. I should probably read up on that. But when I thought about like how did people groom themselves before blades, you know, I wanted to know this personally because I also wanted to be like, well, what am I doing that might be something I'm not supposed to be doing, right? And and my way of thinking about things is very different now. Like I used to think like, oh, what was right, what was wrong, and now I realize like everything is right and everything is wrong at the same time. Like you kind of just have to walk with integrity and find out what your right and wrong is. Hopefully you're not a sociopath because then your right is super wrong. But anyway, what I'm saying is that I wanted to have an understanding about how fire was used in grooming, and fire being so symbolic to me and to our peoples in general, Tamil peoples. um, I think fire is symbolic to every culture, but what I'm talking about is that I'm Hindu, and what fire plays, what role fire plays in our traditions. But anyway, um, I wanted to know what the sacredness of the fire and what the symbolism of the fire was in regards to hair, and I equated it with, not that this was taught to me, but I equated it with it being a sort of purification, a ridding of, almost an erasing. And I had to understand that for me because that's what it felt like. Every time I shaved my head, even now when I shave my head, I feel clean and clear and almost like I have direct access to another way of being that I don't have when my hair has been grown out. And that's my personal relationship to my head shaving and my hair. You know what I'm saying? And that's, yeah. So sort of say. So if I can just say that my career has a foundation that is rooted in the work and culture of Black people, meaning that my career would not be in existence were it not for the work of Black folks. And I know this, and I feel blessed. And I know probably way more clear now than ever before what I need to be doing as an artist in order to make sure that I am constantly centering Black folks in everything that I do. So, given that, I will say that as a youngster, I think I was 11 when I heard, when I was introduced to Yo MTV Raps. It was the one hip hop show on MTV, and I didn't understand that all these Black folks were not immigrant. I thought they all had African names. They were all wearing African clothing. I thought that they were African and that they were talking about their communities. And so I was so drawn into that. I was like, oh my God, I could talk about my community. And then I realized later that, you know, Black folks, Black MCs were going back to their roots. But what I was drawn to more than anything was the fact that this work was social. There were social issues. Everybody was organized as artists for social justice issues, right? So, um, so that was kind of like how I started my career. And I was a poet and I was doing storytelling, and then I started slowly doing comedy, and then later I was doing theater, and then now I'm mostly an actor, writer, comic, even though I still write in a whole bunch of different genres. But who has influenced me from the beginning to even now has, well, it's been a smattering of folks, but definitely queer folks of color and definitely Black folks. Um, I feel like, how could I not be drawn to resistance art? You know, here I was growing up in Lancaster, and yes, I had privileges because I grew up. We were a part of the families that came pre '83, and my appa came when America's brain drain was happening, and as a general practitioner, as a doctor. So by the time that we got to Lancaster, it was like everybody was, like there was like a land of white, and there was like these small little group of Tamil-Sri Lankan folks, and and we, in my family, and I almost feel like it was a lot of families, but we were politicized at such a young age because we were hearing about the war, and we were hearing about like what our community needed to do in order to help the folks back home, right? And then at that same time as I'm forming these ideas, there, Lancaster is historically where the KKK established their first West Coast church back in the day. So there's remnants of that shit still that permeate. And we heard about neo-Nazis and the KKK, and we knew about that shit. We knew that you had to be careful on that land, right? So then fast forward to, or not fast forward to, but like mixed in with all of that is sort of my understanding of myself as a queer person, and me also seeing in MCs, particularly Queen Latifah, who we know her as an actress now, but like was a dope fucking MC. And so then when I'm listening to her and I'm like, oh my God, like look at this strong woman, like, oh my God, like I could be that. And that was the first time as a queer person who knew I was queer from that age, felt like, oh wow, I can, even if I can't be a boy, I could grow up and be like that, and that was like my world blew wide open. And so there was freedom in these images that were coming from the Black arts movements. So, so now when I think about what Tamil folks who have come here as refugees or seeking political asylum, whether in North America or in Europe or whatever, but that, you know, some of us are dark and we get racialized as Black. Some of us we're not accepted any other place outside of our Tamil community, but we're also accepted in Black and Indo-Caribbean communities, right? So it's almost like, if these are the places that are accepting you, you got to come in with all your humility and understand that, like, that these Black people never had to fucking accept your ass. You know what I'm saying? So the fact that you have home with Black folks, with other darker skinned people of color, whose relationship to the land in North America is so fucked, like, you got to be a part of that movement. You got to be like asking, how can I show up? How can I make this movement even better? What do I need to do to talk to my Tamil people? What do I, you know what I'm saying? Like, so right now, I have a group of queer South Asian artists that I work with, and we have a South Asian Artists for Black Lives collective, and we're trying to figure out, like, how do we share, like, information back with our families about our racism as South Asians, right? But there's something that I feel like Tamil people in general, or Tamil people specifically outside of the South Asian diaspora, I feel like our relationship to the land that we're on is so crazy, because land in general is a tough ass conversation to be had. So I'm kind of like, if you can't see our Tamil struggle and how it relates to Black folk struggle, immigrant struggles, whatever else struggles, you get what I'm saying? Native folk struggles, come on now, you know what I'm saying? Like, what are you doing? You know, what are you doing? Like, I'm not saying that you have to dedicate your whole life 150% of the time to the movement. I'm saying at least get curious. And don't be an uncle about this shit. You don't know shit. Or don't be a yunkle. You know what I'm saying? Like, just humble yourself. Sit up under some people and just listen, and shut up and just listen. And slowly form who you really want to be and how you want to be in the world that's getting created right now. Because this is a very radical moment right now. So that's what I would say to my community, is just like, you're beautiful. You are so fucking beautiful, Tamil people. I love Tamil people so fucking much. And I'm also asking you, with that beauty, just shh, a little bit. Listen, and then you get to talk too, you know what I'm saying? But just like, humble yourself. I feel like I almost, like, when I hear about people centering these conversations around, like, our colorism within our own community, like, that's a way in to the conversation about our racism towards Black folks. But I feel like it's still not hitting the nail on the head, because what we're really trying to talk about and engage people around is how we as a community, and I don't know what it's like in Toronto and Scarborough and Markham and all of these places, but it's like, if we continue to think that we're better,
Right.
and if we think that we're, like, our lives are more valuable than Black folks, if we believe the stereotypes that we have created around Black people in general that has come from white community and just racist histories in general, like, we got another thing coming. Like, you know, and it's not, you know, like I know I'm not as dark as other Tamil people, but I have been racialized as Black and profiled and pulled over many times and had run-ins with the cops and stupid shit. But I I'm not trying to stay here going, yeah, it happens to me too. I'm still alive. And I feel like that's not, like, I'm not saying that cops don't kill Tamil people, but the historically it has happened far less. And it's not like Tamil people have to wake up every day. I mean, look, I understand PTSD. I'm not talking about that. But like the majority of Tamil people that I know don't wake up fearing for their lives the minute that they walk out of their door. So what I'm saying is, and I'm talking specifically to folks in North America. What I'm saying is that, you know, like it doesn't matter how, like what happens with our, well, I'm not saying it doesn't matter what happens with our bodies. It does matter. But also in the same regard, it matters what happens with other people's bodies who have the same shit happening to them constantly. So I'm not sitting here going, oh yeah, I was thrown, I get, the cops are in my ass too. No. It's like the reason why your ass gets pulled over is because you're feeling the effects of all of this other anti-Black racism. Yeah. I know. I think that that's a great thing too, is like just using our Tamil struggle, like if you pick it apart from top to bottom, understanding colonization, understanding our own stupidity around things that you brought up recently, like just now, colorism, casteism, and then you look at what's happening here in the States to Black and Indigenous people. Like, if you can't insert yourself into this conversation or see some point of connection and reflection, like, you know, if your immediate response is to be defensive, it's like, we don't have time for that anymore. Honestly, we don't have time for it. Like, homie, just humble yourself. Just, you know, that's all I could say, is humble yourself. When I was a youngster, somebody asked me, well, what was your first sort of moment where you became politicized? And I was like, I got politicized through artists and through my father, right? And then she was like, no, but like, what part of the women's movement politicized you? And I was like, you know, I didn't grow up knowing about the women's movement, but I did know about the civil rights movement. You know what I'm saying? And I knew that my queerness was linked to the civil rights movement. And so, having said that, I kind of get upset whenever, like, I get really sad whenever I see how racist queer people can be. I don't even want to call them queer. I want to just call them gays. You know what I'm saying? Because queer is such a politicized word to me, and one that I identify with because I understand myself to be a political artist. So in I kind of am like, you know, in the same way that I'm asking Tamil people to just humble themselves, I'm asking queer people to do the same. I feel like our pride looked different this year because we're in this moment in time where it's a powerful moment. And for the first time, because of it being powerful, do you get what I'm saying? We are able to say the same things we were saying back then, but actually have them heard. And that is so powerful. Like, I'm seeing, you know, what's so beautiful is that if I'm seeing my own Appa being beautifully like thoughtful about what is happening in this moment in time, and his compassion being raised and elevated, the empathy, do you get what I'm saying? that's a win. Do you get what I'm saying? That's a win, because like my appa is like every other appa, give or take, you know, some steps, you know what I'm saying? Um, and and I remember when my appa, when I was younger, he spoke in a particular way where I felt like he could move from that place. Of course, I didn't have language for this, but like I felt like there was strength and power behind how he was connecting himself, at least mentally, to what was happening in the world. And I didn't see that for a long time. And now I'm seeing it again. So what I'm saying is that this is a very powerful moment, that people are actually listening, or because so many people are talking about it, people are listening. And now what's happening is you're seeing a very clear line behind people who, or between people who didn't want to necessarily get on board, and like people who are like, you can talk yourself right in the face. I'm not going to budge. I am happy being a racist. Do you get what I'm saying? Like I feel like for the first time, like it's very clear that some people really just dug their heels in hard as hell and said, oh no, I'm not even trying to battle you. I'm happy with my bigotry and my racism and my whatever, you know? and and actually it's good for us to know this shit, you know what I'm saying? Everybody's true colors are coming out left, right, and center. And so that's why I'm kind of like, I'm watching this, I'm watching all the horrendous stuff that folks are doing, and then I'm also watching all of this beautiful stuff that is happening from our movement. And you know, I in all of this, I am like, it's no longer like, oh, let's just be happy that we're queer together, you know what I'm saying? Like the other day, actually yesterday, I was asked to be on a queer podcast, a little trail off from the end of Pride Month, and I was kind of not looking forward to it. And then the person sent me their list of questions, and I was like, oh my God, I feel so relieved, because the questions were so rooted in this moment in time, instead of just talking about like, okay, and then you were gay, and then what happened, and then you came out, and then, do you get what I'm saying? Um, and I, you know, granted, I always have to feel like I have to do the work to like sort of make a podcast be what it needs to be whenever it doesn't want to center the politic in the moment. But these are that I'm trying to build with people like that, you know, the people who are already there, already thinking about all of this stuff, who took time to pause at the end of whatever month it was into all the uprisings, you know? Wonderful talking to you, and I look forward to expanding my community with my Tamil peoples, with the Hairtails community. Thank you so much for this time, and I'm right by you, growing out my arm hair with you.